Yeah, I mean, in fact, all three of them, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, did this acqui-hires of these startups back in 2024. So these were three different companies. Google did that for Character.AI. Microsoft had the same sort of setup for Inflection. And then Amazon did it for Dept, which is another small AI company. And if you remember back at that time, Lena Khan was the force, and everyone was reluctant when it comes to making these acquisitions. So this was their way of
Okay.
licensing the technology. They were effectively paying a license fee, and in most cases it was non-exclusive. But it ended up basically bringing those employees to work for Google in a way where it wasn't an outright acquisition. It was an independent company still, but they paid the current shareholders of those companies a licensing fee, which pretty much was like
That's
65
a
to 70.
slick kind of transaction.
It
Smart
is.
lawyer somewhere came up with that.
But
Wow.
how different is this from what, say, Microsoft is doing with OpenAI?
Well, that's a 49% stake one. And in that case, in the case of Microsoft, you're right. I mean, the comparison is apt in the sense that OpenAI still remains independent and they're launching their products. In this case, a lot of the folks who were working at Character.AI did end up working on Google's projects. And so same thing with Microsoft. The folks at Inflection AI did end up working on Microsoft's projects. That didn't happen in the case of OpenAI. OpenAI still is kind of doing its own thing when it comes to model training and everything. Microsoft is just licensing the technology. That's not the case here in terms of Character.AI, because Character.AI was a company with less than 200 employees. And
I see.
Google ended up licensing that for almost 2.5 billion. So think
Nice.
of, a license fee of 2.5 billion.
That feels hearty.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
I see, I
look,
get it, okay.
I think there was that aspect which was kind of in between in terms of how do you make an acqui-hire without an outright acquisition, and the amount was pretty big, and everyone was surprised. But all these three companies did that one after the other.
Yep.
So they somehow got away, and now we are seeing the DOJ is looking into it.
All right, if I'm on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, where all the smart money is, how do I view this administration here? Are they pro-tech or not pro-tech?
I think so far they are looking to bring down the regulations for sure. We have seen some pretty big deals getting announced. I mean, the Google's acquisition of Wiz, that is an M&A.
Right.
$32 billion. And,
Yes,
and
right, good
so
point.
there has been a flurry of M&A activity. So I would say they are pro deal making. At the same time, I think with big tech, every company is different in terms of, how the administration views them. And, the DOJ and FTC have been doing these investigations. So it doesn't surprise me that they're looking into it. I doubt there will be a big fine, but probably you should talk to Jen Rhee, our legal expert, if what she thinks about this.
But Paul pointed out that the stock is up over 3%. How much of that is like ignoring the headlines versus still going back to the AI developer day for Google, where they unveiled the whole suite of products?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great event. And overall, I think the sentiment this week is still Google's models are getting better. Their execution is getting better. They're shipping a lot more products. So this seems to be something that, yes, they are involved with. At the worst case is they may have to pay a fine, but really nothing changes as far as their AI development efforts.
When I started my career on the street in the mid-'80s, it was all about Microsoft and the regulatory challenges they were just starting to go through, primarily with European regulators. And we were freaking out like every day, like, oh my God, there's going to be it. And then we look back on it 10 years later and we're like, nothing happened. And I think a whole generation of us have kind of become conditioned to viewing big tech and regulation as not that big a deal. Don't worry about it at the end. I wonder if we're getting too complacent, though. Will they ever say Amazon break up, Google break up, or one of those things?
I mean, there is always a probability of that happening, I still think it's a low probability event given everyone wants these companies to do better than the equivalent Chinese companies.
good
And
point.
so
Yep.
that aspect still remains. And look, the worst case with these sort of investigations is these companies may end up paying a fine.
Yep.
That's what we have seen in the EU. Google has paid over, $10 billion in fines. And the stock will still be okay because this is just one time. They make the remedies and you move on. So I think that's the worst case here in terms of a slap on the wrist. And, you change the behavior. You're not going to do more acqui-hires like that, $1 billion acqui-hires. But beyond that, it's hard to fathom.